Okay, so this first video is on adding integers with the same sign. And when they talk about the same sign, they're talking about positive signs and negative signs. So example, positive 3 versus negative 3. And if we take 3 positives and we add 3 negatives, what are we going to end up with? So adding integers, positive and negative numbers, with the same sign. So positive 3 plus positive 3 would be the same sign. Negative 3, which would be 6 positive. And then negative 3 and negative 3 would equal negative 6, because if you have 3 negatives and you're adding 3 negatives, you would end up with 6 negatives. So that's the basic idea of lesson 1.1. But what they're going to do is they're going to model using two color counters. On one side is yellow, on the other side is red. So the yellow means positive 1, the red means negative 1. So if you have 3 positive counters, 1, 2, 3, and you add 4 positive counters, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the total number of positive counters is 7. So how many counters are there in total? 7 positive counters. I put the plus here so that I know that I'm talking about positive counters. So what is the sum and how do you find it? I'm not going to write a sentence, but in your own words you would want to explain that if I have 3 positive counters and I add 4 positive counters, the sum will be 7 positive counters. Alright, now the next example here is 2 negative sign integers. So negative 5 and negative 3. So if you have 5 negative counters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you add 3 negative counters to that group, 1, 2, 3, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 negative counters. So how many counters are there in total? Negative 8. Well, how many counters are there? There's 8, but there are 8 negatives, all right? And since the counters are negative, what is the sum? Negative 8. That's kind of, okay, I can see how many counters are there. There are 8 counters. And since the counters are negative integers, what is the sum? The sum is negative 8. There are 8 negatives. All right, that's an important distinction. Okay. Now, when you're adding on a number line, what we want to make sure we're clear on is how important is it that we use a number line, and the actual standard for 7.NS.1 specifically asks us to represent adding and subtracting on a horizontal or vertical number line diagram. So we have to add and subtract integers on a number line. So this is a kind of number line. It's just up and down. And here's our 0 space. So here they give us an example where the temperature was 2 degrees Fahrenheit below 0. So we have it starting here at negative 2 below 0, right? Well, 2 below 0. The temperature dropped by 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So dropping means it's going to go down. That's telling us that it's going to be negative. So what's the temperature now? Negative 2. So we count down 5. Negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. So if we use this number line here, which has those little lines for negative 3, negative 5, negative 7, then we can put a dot at the starting point. The temperature was 2 degrees below 0, which is right here, negative 2. And the temperature drops by 5 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what is this resulting temperature? Negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit. So it says, what is the initial temperature? Written as an integer, negative 2. Mark the initial temperature on the number line. We did. A drop in temperature is like adding negative 5 to the temperature. Notice they used that word adding. We're adding negative 5. All right? We had negative 2, and we're adding negative 5. So make sure that you pay attention to the words. Count on the number line to find the final temperature. What is the temperature written as an integer? The resulting temperature. -7. What is the temperature written as an integer? So they don't want the degrees, they just want the integer. The temperature is 7 degrees, or 7 with a little degree symbol next to it, below 0. So what we're doing is we're showing how to subtract two negative numbers, or rather add two negative numbers on a number line. So we really want to get used to using a number line because we're going to see it on tests because that is the standard specifically. So we're adding integers with a common sign. That's what we're working on. Now here we're using absolute values in this example. And we're using absolute values because this is a 6th grade standard. Absolute values was taught in 6th grade. So this should be just a refresher, where these two little lines, if we have a negative number in there, those two lines is referring to the distance from 0 on a number line. All right? So -2 is 2 spots away from 0. So -2, how many spots away from 0 is it? It's 2 spots away. Its absolute value is 2. So that's something that we learn in 6th grade. So when they say the absolute value of -7, they mean +7. The absolute value of -6 is just 6. It's 6 digits from 0. So when we find the sum of the absolute values, 7 and 6, we get 13. All right? Now, we're being asked to add -7 plus -6. Okay? So we're going to use the sign of the integers to write the sum. -7 plus -6 equals -13. So this example is trying to get us to understand adding negatives by using absolute values. Now, if that's confusing, don't worry about it. All right? That's just one way of thinking about this. You do not have to use absolute value. This is just another way of doing this. Okay, moving on to the next page into guided practice, where we have to find each sum. If you have 5 negatives and you add another negative, how many negatives do you have? Well, you're going to end up with 6 counters, all of them being negative. So, same thing here, 2 negatives and 7 negatives is how many negatives? 9 negatives. And it goes on like this, where all we're doing is practicing using number lines to add integers of the same sign. So I'm not going to go through the independent practice, but hopefully this makes sense when talking about adding integers with the same sign. All right, I'm going to go into lesson 1.2 in the next video.